Welcome back. You're listening to Jason Lee Willis's Examining Christmas. Today's episode will discuss the birthday, Anna and Simeon, as well as some talk about Herod. Episode 10, Two Giving Figs. Before we get to Herod and talk about Jerusalem, let's spend a little time going over the background behind the date of Christmas. At a quick glance, it seems pretty arbitrary. Nothing clearly states when Jesus was born. In fact, early Christians used to view birthdays as a pagan practice, thus beneath them. Now, it is certainly worthy to commemorate the Nativity. But those who would have known the details about Jesus' birth would not have bothered to bake a cake, light the candles, and exchange birthday presents. It just wasn't a thing. It also doesn't mention the season of his birth. Do I think it fits with the Feast of Dedication? Yes, but it simply does not say on the record, does it? I've also read shepherd theories, but having raised sheep myself, I can remember tending my flock 24/7, 365, so that little tidbit doesn't really help much either. So how did we end up with December 25th? There are three excellent biblical points that support a winter birthday. But before we get to those, let's get all of the ick out of the way. Ick number 1. Saturnalia. For those of you who have avoided the horror series The Purge, let me explain. Saturnalia is a Roman holiday that begins with debauchery and ends in human sacrifice. It was a week-long ordeal beginning on December 17th and ending on December 25th. This bizarre ritual existed for centuries prior to Jesus and seemed to exist at some level for a while after Jesus. While the Catholic Church was born in Rome, Christianity existed throughout the Roman Empire and then some. Some speculate that the Roman Catholics just merged two holidays together. But pagan and Christian ceremonies could easily have coexisted for quite a while. Ick number 2. Long before the Romans possessed the Holy Lands, the Persians and Greeks held it. As I mentioned in the previous chapter, the Feast of Dedication came about because the Seleucid Emperor, Antiochus Epiphanes, was flat out evil and wanted a bloodbath. He knew the trigger for the Jews would be the desecration of the temple, so that's what he did. A riot broke out that turned into a war. Things didn't go as expected. Some stories say that Antiochus Epiphanes' birthday was December 25th. So this outrageous act was both personal and strategic. Ick number 3. Before he dubbed himself Antiochus Epiphanes, he was born Mithridates. The Persians worshipped a god named Mithras and celebrated his birthday on, you guessed it, December 25th. So yes, there are 3 icky things associated with the date. But isn't it just like evil to try to muddy up something good? That is why I think the Festival of Lights is so cool, because the Maccabee boys gave evil the middle finger on December 25th, turning it from a dark holiday, Mithras, into a light holiday. Sorry about the pun. So let's build a case for December 25th. Speculation number 1. The Zacharias timeline. This all hinges on Zacharias being a high priest and performing his rites in the temple on the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, you can easily pull at the strings of this argument, but I love the timeline it supports. First, The Feast of Tabernacles would take place around September. Add 6 months onto that, and Mary conceives right around the time of the Passover, which is awesome symbolism, another A+ for God. This means that John was born around June. Ironically, St. John's birthday is celebrated in June. Add 6 months onto June, and you have December. See how fun that was? Speculation number 2. The baptism timeline. This theory needs to be counted both backwards and forwards. The book of John gives specific days from Jesus being baptized to the wedding in Cana. But there is no mention of the temptation in the wilderness. John's next anecdote is placed at the Passover in Jerusalem. If you add up the two anecdotes, you start with Passover in March. 40 days of walking into the wilderness, 40 days of potentially walking out of the wilderness, 3 or 4 days walking to Cana from the baptism, and that all equals, yeah, that's right, 90 days prior to being at the Passover, Jesus was visiting Jerusalem during the Feast of Dedication. The significance? Regarding John the Baptist, it clearly states that he returned to Judea when he turned 30. Apparently, the bar mitzvah is a new, relatively speaking, 14th century Jewish custom. And before that, a man waited until his 30th birthday before he was given voice in adult matters, such as publicly reading scripture in the synagogue. If John returned in June, he had several months to rile up the local authorities. If John returned when he was 30, then 6 months later, Jesus turned 30 also. Jesus gets baptized right after his birthday, folks. Then his ministry begins. Speculation number 3. Herod's death. The historians are pretty solid on this detail. Just please excuse Pope Gregory. Okay, let's first explain the Gregorian calendar. Gregory wanted to count the years since Jesus' birth. Sounds like something I would do. The whole BC AD thing. To him, everything changed when Jesus was born. So why not count down from his death then, right? Okay, anyways. Unfortunately, the calendar got really messed up because the experts realized that Caesar Octavius was the same guy as Caesar Augustus, the artist formerly known as Octavius. Octavius changed his name 4 years into his reign. Gregory's guys thought they were two different rulers. Because of this gaffe, all the dates that had just been recalculated were off by 4 years. So Jesus technically was born in our 4 BC. I know. Thanks to Roman and Jewish records, we know exactly when Herod died, March 13th. You see, there was an eclipse in the sky that day, and also, well, people wrote it down, along with Herod's death. Remember, Mary and Joseph fled to Egypt to escape the wrath of Herod, and then an angel came and told them it was safe to go back home. If Herod was a psychopath, which he was, then he would have continued to hunt them down if he heard any rumors. A quick trip to Egypt makes sense. Now, let's take some time to discuss old Herod for a while. Because while Mary and Joseph were meeting the shepherds, Herod was probably noticing the angels in the skies above Bethlehem. In 74 BC, wait, is that be 78 or 70? Thanks, Gregory. Now my head hurts. Herod was born in Idumea, which is south of Judea, and was a Judaized, that's a mouthful, Edomite, another mouthful. Oh, Edomites, you remember Lot and his daughters? No, that's because most Sunday school classes avoid talking about incest between father and daughter, especially one that creates an entire nation. Edomites were the ultimate hillbillies to the Jews. So Herod had a little bit of Jew in him, but mostly he was an outsider. At the age of 25, Herod was appointed governor of Judea because of his close relationship with Rome. The Sanhedrin didn't like him, but when he was dethroned by the Parthians, he fled back to Rome. While in Rome, the Senate gave him the title King of the Jews. And when he returned in 37 BC, he married the Jewish princess Mariamne to seal the deal. I'm your new king. Oh, Herod. As king of Judea, he played a critical role in the Roman civil wars. Initially, he allied himself with Mark Antony and Cleopatra of Egypt, but he quickly changed sides to favor the Caesar formerly known as Octavius, Augustus. As a reward for his loyalty, Herod was given a force of 2,000 foreign secret police and the friendship of Rome. He immediately became a great builder, restoring the Temple of Solomon, building a harbor at Caesarea, the fortress of Masada, and a pagan shrine at Peneus, which he labeled Caesarea Philippi. Oh yeah, and he was a psycho killer too. Yep, he killed wives, sons, and anyone else that threatened his power. After 5 marriages, he had evil heirs all over the place. If he were willing to kill one of his own sons to secure his throne, how would he react to the news of a Messiah being born nearby? Even though the name Caiaphas belongs to the Easter story, it is more likely than not that he was around during the same time period. Remember, 30 years after Jesus was born, this guy, Caiaphas, was firmly entrenched as the Roman appointed high priest. During Herod's reign, Shimon ben Boethus was the high priest, a man with old bloodlines. Just like today, there were social liberals and conservatives in Jerusalem. Pharisees were old school. Sadducees were more Greek in attitude. So too were the religious families grasping for power. Bet Shammai was considered the conservative house, while Bet Hillel was viewed to be the liberals. Caiaphas would have been a young man at the time, born into the Kupai family. Never heard of them? Yeah, see, that was the problem. Caiaphas earned the nickname the Monkey after publicly opposing Mishnat Hasidim. Yeah, I know. His next move was much more successful. He married the daughter of Annas bar Seth, who was poised for a power play. Remember, Quirinius was called into Syria to help put down an uprising by rebels, and Governor Varus is credited with putting down a religious uprising at the same time period. Well, guess what happened in 4 BC? Jesus was born. That's right. Annas bar Seth deposed Herod's former high priest and sets up his family and Caiaphas' son-in-law for a run that would last all the way up to the year 63 AD. It makes you wonder what made Herod change his mind. As you can imagine, even during the Festival of Lights, Jerusalem was a scary place to visit. Let's get back to Mary and Joseph for a while. We know with certainty Jesus was born in Bethlehem, but we do not know how long they stayed, do we? Did Joseph ever go down to the registration station? Did the pregnancy interrupt this? Well, we do know she gave birth, and Jesus spent at least one night in a manger. Then what? If I'm Joseph, I would want to get the Christ out of the manger as soon as possible, which means he had to politely wait at least a few days for Mary to rest. Did their families worry? Again, if they traveled with others, did the others come looking for them? They must have known where they went. Zacharias, for example, certainly would have been worried and then stunned when the Bethlehem prophecy came true. Okay, so let's give Mary a few extra days and say they waited in Bethlehem for 5 days. Then what? Back to Nazareth? Well, it would make sense to go home. You must remember that Jesus was a firstborn son. There were religious rules and expectations. Jesus needed to be circumcised. Luke chapter 2, verse 21 reads, "And when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child, his name was called Jesus, which was so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb." Okay, I would not want to be the guy with the blade, but since the days of Genesis, circumcision was a holy ritual. Who would I take baby Jesus to see? Well, Zacharias seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? He is a holy man and a relative. Perfect. One thing I know for certain is that he did not live in Bethlehem, or else there would have been room for Mary and Joseph somewhere in town. Although only speculative, Bethany still makes sense to me based on the whole Lazarus friendship situation. Bethany is only a few miles from Bethlehem and Jerusalem, so when Mary did agree to travel, the trip would have only lasted a few hours before she could rest. If the Feast of Dedication happened to begin on December 25th, all of the religious pilgrims would have left Jerusalem 8 days later. Nice coincidence, right? Now, that Jesus is circumcised, they can head back to Nazareth, right? Unfortunately, there were a few more religious conventions. And since Jesus was not only male, but was also a firstborn, he needed to be dedicated at the temple. Luke chapter 2, verse 22 reads, "And when the days of her purification, according to the law of Moses, were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male that openeth the womb shall be called holy to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice according to that which is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons." So, they're kind of stuck in Judea for the next 32 days. If they were regular folks, which they are not, they would have certainly rushed home and done this at the next festival, like Passover in March. If they are staying with family in a house, then why not spend more time with Zacharias and Elizabeth? Certainly, Zacharias would have been honored to spend a few weeks with his Messiah. How could you say no to this request? 40 days after Jesus was born, Mary could have brought him into the temple. Imagine the fear and excitement they must have felt bringing Jesus into the big city. They probably wanted to keep their heads low and just get it over with. Instead, the opposite happened. Luke chapter 2, verse 25 reads, "And behold, there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon. And the same man was just and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Ghost was upon him. And it was revealed unto him by the Holy Ghost that he should not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. And he came by the Spirit into the temple. And when the parents brought in the child Jesus to do for him after the custom of the law, then he took him into his arms and blessed God and said, Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace, according to thy word. For mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared for the face of all people, a light to lighten the Gentiles, and the glory of thy people Israel. And Joseph and his mother marveled at those things which were spoken of him. And Simeon blessed them, and said unto Mary his mother, Behold, this child is set for the fall and the rising again of many in Israel, and for a sign which shall be spoken against. Yea, a sword shall pierce through thy own soul also, that the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed." How awesomely horrible was that? Whew. Not that Mary and Joseph needed any more confirmation about their baby being the Christ, but hey, some stranger came right up and verified it. Dang. Remember the desire for privacy? Well, this old guy Simeon, regardless of his intentions, just put a big target on your back only a few blocks away from psychopaths like Herod and Caiaphas, not to mention the Romans too. Gee, thanks, Simeon. Yeah, we know. And what about all that cryptic talk at the end? Swords shall pierce your soul? I sure hope that was a metaphor. There's also quite a bit of beauty in his words, especially if this took place after the Festival of Lights. I'm sure Mary and Joseph wanted to bolt, but before they could leave for home or return to the house of Zacharias and Elizabeth, another special moment happens. Luke chapter 2, verse 36 reads, "And there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. She was of great age, and had lived with a husband 7 years from her virginity. And she was a widow of about 84 years, which departed not from the temple, but served God with fastings and prayers night and day. And she, coming in that instant, gave thanks likewise unto the Lord, and spake of him to all them that looked for redemption in Jerusalem." All sorts of awesomeness here. First, the fact that Anna exists is a miracle. Now, I'm not talking about her age, but that is quite impressive for the time period. She comes from the tribe of Asher. Now, in case you don't know, the 12 tribes broke up shortly after King Solomon stole the throne from his brother. Israel became the term for the 10 northern tribes, and Judea became the term for the 2 southern tribes, Judah and Benjamin. When Assyria grew strong, it flexed its muscles by annihilating the northern kingdom, selling the survivors into slavery, essentially erasing the tribes from the map. Centuries later, while the tribe of Judah flourishes still as the Jews of the Holy Land, Anna shows up representing the tribe of Asher? That's cool. She, like her tribe, has been through a lot. And as a reward, she gets to see the Christ before she dies. Both Anna and Simeon also reinforced what I assume Mary and Joseph knew well by this point: the purpose of the Christ. Heck, Simeon all but said Mary's heart would be broken. Keep the camera rolling. Anna gives the baby back. And now what? Are Mary and Joseph packed, ready to return to Nazareth? Luke seems to imply that, because he jumps right over into a verse about going back to Nazareth, because that's where Jesus grew up, right, Luke? Luke also refers to Mary and Joseph performing all things required of them. All things. Bethlehem birth, check. Circumcised, check. Presented at the temple, check. Wowed some old folks, double check. Anything left to fulfill, Joseph? The Magi? Did Luke forget to mention that detail? You've been listening to Jason Lee Willis's Examining Christmas. Join me again for episode 11, Gifts of the Wise Men. Until we meet again.